Hello, welcome to my channel, and now I will talk about literary works of the Augustan era. Augustan literature, sometimes referred to misleadingly as Georgian literature, is a style of British literature produced during the reigns of Queen Anne, King George I, and George II in the first half of the 18th century and ending in the 1740s with the deaths of Alexander Pope and Jonathan Swift in 1744 and 1745, respectively. The Industrial Revolution, which flourished at the end of the 18th century, had a lot of influence in social. One result of the Industrial Revolution was the proliferation of printed books. The printing industry grew rapidly, and printed books that were once scarce are now easy to find. The negative impact of the ease with which it is easy to print literary work is that there is no control over quality works, or not, so that the general public becomes confused about choosing quality literary works in the midst of the flood of printed materials. In literary works, this period is also known by other names. This period is also called the Neoclassical period, the age of Neoclassicism, because it emphasizes order, logic, suppression of emotion, accuracy with the aim of achieving proportion, unity, harmony, and elegance in literary works so that they are able to generate pleasure. Direct and correct human behavior is social creature. It was a literary epoch that featured the rapid development of the novel, an explosion in satire, the mutation of drama from political satire into melodrama, and an evolution toward poetry of personal exploration. In philosophy, it was an age increasingly dominated by empiricism, while in the writings of political economy, it marked the evolution of mercantilism as a formal philosophy, the development of capitalism, and the triumph of trade. The poetry. Let's talk about poetry in Augustan era. Augustan poetry is a product of intelligence, common sense, reason, and sanity. Let's see the eminent writers of the period. Alexander Pope, 1688 to 1744. Pope is the representative poet of the Augustan age. His famous works include Pastoral and Essay in Criticism, Winds of Forest, The Wreck of the Lot, translation of Iliad and Odyssey, Elegy to the Memory of an Unfortunate Lady, and an Essay on a Man. Pope's poetry is the real picture of the spirit of the age. The three poems in which he is undisputably spokesman of his age are The Wreck of the Love, picturing its frivolities, conceit, unveiling its squalor, The Essay on Man, and Coy, its philosophy. He is a representative poet of the age of process and reason. A heart, intellectuality, and rationality, qualities proper to prose, distinguish Pope's poetry. Dr. Samuel Johnson, 1709 to 1784. Dr. Johnson, a voluminous writer, was a man of versatile literary genius. He was the acknowledged dictator in contemporary literature. Smollett called him the great champ of literature. Johnson took Poems, London, and the Vanity of Human Wishes belong to the Augustan school of poetry, but are written in the heroic couplet and abound in personification and other devices that belong to the poetic diction of the age of Neoclassicism, and their didacticism, their formal rhetorical style, and their adherence to the closet couplet. They belong to the neoclassic poetry. Other poets who deserve mention are Matthew Prior, John Gray, Edward Young, and Lady Winchelsea. And now we go to prose. Prose developed rapidly in this August period. which was preceded by development of periodicals, such as newspaper or magazine. In 1702, the first newspaper appeared, the Daily Courant, which was soon followed by other periodicals. Then the Tatler in 1709 and the Spectator in 1711. The Tatler contained political news, light essays, and gossip that was the widely gossip running. Clue clubs or coffee shops that were starting to appear at that time. Famous figures during this period were Daniel Defoe, 1661 to 1731, a middle-class dissident, was the son of a retailer. He is considered the pioneer of realistic fiction. One thing that is important about Defoe is the direction of the novel. He was writing a number of lengthy narrative prose that looks more like a picaresque novel about the adventure. Jonathan Swift, 1667 to 1745, is known as a prose satire writer with a great sense of humor. As an intellectual, he likes someone as an individual being, not as a collective being, which are sensitive, arrogant, vengeful, and also a person who is always angry. He harbored bitter feelings for his own destiny and for the surrounding community. This feeling he poured into his works. And the last, Samuel Johnson, 1709–1784. The author, better known as Dr. Johnson, has dominated the world of English literature for years, so many have called him the dictator of literature. He was a first-rate prose writer of the 18th century. In the beginning, he contributed to the Gentleman's Magazine and to his periodical The Rambler, which appeared twice. Johnson's prose style has been variously termed as manly and straightforward, lucidly distinct, heavy, individual, and ponderous, full of mannerism, vigorous and forceful, wearisome but legit. To him, a standard prose style should be above coarseness and below refinement. The peculiar power of his style consists in making the old new and the commonplace individual. And what about the drama in the Augustan era? This August period was an arid period in dramatic literary works. The first half of the 18th century was almost blank in dramatic literature. The days of the brilliant Restoration comedy of manners were over. The only two writers who deserve to be mentioned here are John Gay, 1685 to 1732, who wrote The Beggar of Opera, published in 1728, and is a satirical play on Italian operas, and George Lilo, 1698 to 1739, with his The London Merchant or The History of George Banwell, which was published in 1731, which is a social drama. Okay, let's sum up. This period is said to be a glorious revolution because indeed in this period it is achievement that is not easy. If we pull back to the Puritan era where the people split and have the Civil War, that is the darkest time, and then they have a period of restoration. This is period of recovery from a chaos and dark period in Puritan era. Here, a Restoration era comes to the satirized critics, poetry with content political upheaval, drama with contents moral, and prose which mostly uses ratio as material, not imagination. My opinion, it was during this Restoration period that the determination of the fate of an English era civilization, and in Augustan era, England entered a new chapter of a new civilization, a civilization that will bring England into a modern era. Okay, that is Augustan period for me for the literature. Okay, thank you. Bye.